My 10-year-old daughter, Emery, just dropped out of school here in South Florida. I have a short story to share with you, which will explain the decision-making process that Krista, my wife Krista, and I had when it came to the ultimate badass world-building move to homeschool and self-educate our own child, to turn our back on public school, to turn our back on private school, and to take 100% responsibility for educating, raising an entrepreneur, and taking accountability and responsibility for educating our own child. Enough was enough for us. So as I shared in a video before this a few months ago, during the China virus, my daughter was struggling like a lot of children. There was, where we were in Canada, the schools were being consistently shut down. The hockey arenas, the sports arenas, the pool, the playground, it was lockdowns and restrictions everywhere, which is a challenge for mental health because the children are pushed onto screens for what I call fake education. Zoom education is not education. Kids learn next to nothing on Zoom. There is no replacement for the classroom when it comes to anybody. You know that. There's no replacement for a seminar. There's no replacement for being in the classroom every single day. And Zoom school is the ultimate BS learning format. Nonetheless, we were forced into that during the China virus. My daughter had never been on a screen before. She had never been on an iPad, never used a cell phone, never been on a laptop. And all of a sudden she was forced onto a screen every day, at least every weekday. So because, that's how they were learning when the schools were closed. So it wasn't long until, she was on a screen 5 days a week for 2, 3, maybe 4 hours. And then, of course, you combine that with the Canadian winter. Hockey's canceled, power skating was canceled, art class was canceled, chess was canceled. All of the restrictions and all of the lockdowns, our children, like ourselves, we had nothing to do and nowhere to go, and we didn't have the socialization of our friends and family. So to make a short story long, one of my daughter's teachers, one of the, not her actually classroom teacher, but one of her teachers that teaches her one of the subjects outside of school, said to my wife, Emery seems to have focus issues. She seems to be having trouble focusing. And of course, this is always the red flag that leads to the medicating of millions and millions and millions of American and Canadian children. That's the game, right? The ADD and the ADHD game, where we take especially little boys that have ants in their pants, full of energy, which they're supposed to be. If I had a son, I certainly wouldn't want him not to have ants in his pants. But as soon as they show any lack of focus, high energy, ants in their pants, then let's get them tested. Let's get them to a therapist. Let's get them into the big pharma game, and let's get these children sedated and medicated as soon as possible. You start sedating and medicating a little girl or a little boy at age 4 or 5. Guess what the rest of that looks like for the next 70 years? Sedated and medicated. Big Pharma loves that game. and the therapists and the mental health, the manufactured mental health industry is all just part of it. It's just all just part of it. And it's one huge, massive $1 trillion game that's all connected. I don't trust those fucking therapists. I don't trust those doctors with my child, are you kidding me? I make my own decisions. So I went and talked to a real coach, a real so-called therapist in Dan Leonis, who is the creator of the Einstein Blueprint. And I went to Dan and I said, well, one of my daughter's teachers is complaining that Emery doesn't have focus. She's not able to focus. And Dan's got a ton of experience with hundreds, if not thousands of children from all backgrounds. And he talked about how that with most children, especially with gifted children, they have what he called fragmented attention span. In other words, if they're interested in something, if they have a passion or an obsession for a topic, then good morning, then they have incredible laser-like focus. Whatever the topic is. If they love math, then they have laser-like focus. If they like piano, they have laser-like focus. If they love sports, they have laser-like focus. If they, whatever it is. And then for everything else they have no interest in, then focus is a problem. That doesn't mean that they need to be sedated. That doesn't mean that they're mentally ill. That doesn't mean that they need to be medicated. That doesn't mean that they need to be, given drugs for the rest of their life so that they have no ambition, no goals, no vision, that you literally knock the life force out of them. So the same thing applied with my daughter. If she had a passion or obsession, she has a handful of gifts where she has obsession and passion and some ability. She loves art, she loves drawing, she loves painting, she loves creating, and she clearly has a gift for that. And most importantly, she has a passion and obsession for it. If she has a piece of paper, then in front of her, she's drawing, she's doodling, she's drawing unicorns and horses and pictures and amazing stuff. So it's nice to see a child that they have the obsession and the passion with it, and they also have a little bit of talent and ability that can be developed. So I said to Dan, I said, what do we do? And he said, you know what? He said, when they talk about, she might have this or might have that, he said, well, maybe, just maybe, she's a fucking genius. And that sentence just changed my life. It changed Krista and I, our entire approach to raising our child. And this was about 2.5 years ago, during the peak of the lockdowns. And we just completely changed our philosophy from that day on. We started really going all in on the Einstein Blueprint. We started going all in on controlling the controllables in our house. That's a saying we have in our home: control the controllables. So I wasn't controlling the controllables in terms of education. I was doing it in all other areas, but I was handing off education for my child. What greater ROI is there than investing in your child or your grandchild's education? Think about that for a second. What greater return on investment could there possibly be than investing in your child or your grandchild's education? And I'm not talking about, private school. I'm talking about education like chess lessons. I'm talking about things like music and piano. I'm talking about, healthy physical fitness. I'm talking about books. I'm talking about courses. I'm talking about teaching your child or your grandchild about entrepreneurship, raising an alpha entrepreneur. What could have a greater return on investment than teaching your child or your grandchild about sales, how to sell their way through life, teaching them about copywriting, how to write for money, teaching our children how to how to build their own and create their own companies at will if that's what they want to do, so that they can live anywhere in the world, have financial freedom, have location freedom, have personal sovereignty. Those are the things that have the greatest ROI. The other stuff doesn't even come close. So I had it all wrong. I was focused on, marketing ROI for this and my business and teaching her skating and teaching her hockey and all these other things. But the one thing I was whiffing on, the biggest blind spot up to 2 weeks ago was education in the classroom. I was handing off the responsibility of teaching my child to teachers in a school. It doesn't matter if it's a Montessori school. It doesn't matter if it's a public school. It doesn't matter if it's a private school. I'm just telling you right now, our children, they know jack shit of important stuff. They know nothing when it comes to what's taught in the school system. And Krista and I were concerned about this here in Florida for the last year. Emery went to school here last year for 4 months, and she went to school at same school, and then she started going again this year. She went for a month, and at home she's in Montessori as well. But every day I would ask her on the ride home, and I would say, okay, what did you work on today? What math did you do? Well, I worked on math for 5 minutes maybe. I'm like, really? And then I was like, okay, what history did you do? Well, I didn't do any history. And then, good morning. I was like, what geography did you do? Well, I didn't do any geography. Okay, I was like, okay, what history did you talk about? Well, we didn't do any history. I'm like, what writing? Did you do any cursive writing? No, we didn't do any cursive writing. Did you do any reading today at school? Well, the teacher read to us for 20 minutes. And then I'm like, did you have gym? What did you do at gym? Well, we only have gym once a week, fitness once a week. And I'm like, how long were you outside today? Well, we were outside for 20 minutes every day after lunch. 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, you've learned nothing today, you've done nothing, and you've been inside the whole time. What did you do? Well, I worked on a little bit of this, and the boys were acting up, and the teacher was distracted with all the behavior problems in the classroom, and this kid was causing this problem, and this kid was causing this problem, and then the teacher had to leave. And I'm just like, wow, the opposite of a success environment, the opposite of what I talk about here for setting you up for winning. In other words, no distractions, bolted door, no cell phone, no internet, just focused on the task at hand. That's the opposite of our school classrooms. Test your kid. If you think I'm wrong, test your kid. Test your grandkid. 2 + 2 = 5. They don't know. Sit down with a blank piece of paper and get your kid to do what Dan calls their twos, all the way up. 2 + 2, 4. 4 + 2, 6. 6 + 2. They'll be stumped. Sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and do their threes. 3 + 3 = 6, + 3 = 9, + 3 = 12, all the way up to 200. They won't be able to do it. Your kid can't do it. Your grandkid can't do it. Then do their fours on a piece of blank paper. 4 + 4 + 4 + 4, all the way to 300. They can't do it. Not even close. Fives, and then you do your sixes, and then you do your sevens every day. Then you do your eights. Then you do your nines. 9 + 9. 18 + 9, all the way up to 300. You do your twos, your threes, your fours, your fives, your six, your seven, your eights, your nines, all the way up to 300. And you do that every day, and it should take 4 minutes. Each sheet of paper should take 4 minutes. My kid's now at 5 minutes. Every day, math for breakfast. She does her 2, she does her 3, she does her 4, she does her 5, she does her 6s, she does her 7s, she does her 8s, she does her 9s. Then she turns over the page and she does them backwards. 300 back the other way. 300 minus 2, 300 minus 3, 300 minus 4, 300 minus 8, 300 all the way down to 0. And that should take less than 5 minutes. Can your kid do that? Can your grandkid do that? They can't even make fucking change. Okay, when you buy a newspaper, or you buy a coffee, or you buy a donut, or you buy a sandwich, they can't even make change. My kid's here this week with my dad, and she's rolling all her pennies, her nickels, and her dimes, and she's gonna be taking to the bank. Grandpa's teaching her how to roll her change, not stick it in a drawer, not put it in a cup holder. She's rolling her change. So she's learning how to count bills. And we're practicing, okay? Guy gives you 20, that's 1640. How do you count it back? Just like I learned working in the general store, just like my dad did running the general store, just like you did before a computer did your thinking for you. So it's just one big joke, education. It's just one big joke. It's run by the government. Our public schools are run by the government. Our private schools are hardly any better, if better at all. And the bottom line is our kids know nothing. Okay, once again, if you doubt what I'm talking about, then good morning. Just ask, just sit down with your child and say, okay, name all the states and see how many states that they can name. You know, your grade 3 should be able to do this. Your grandkid who's in grade 4 should know every single American state, and they should know every single capital city. They couldn't even pick out Washington on a map. They couldn't pick out Washington on a map. We talk about China. Couldn't they even pick out China on a map? Have they even been on a map? Do they know where Afghanistan is? Do they know where North Korea is? Do they know where Australia is? Do they know where Canada is on a map? So just do the test. They know nothing. They know nothing. They've been taught nothing in the classroom. So if you made the mistake like I did, good morning, of delegating any part of their education to the education system, then they know nothing about that. Do you think entrepreneurship is taught in schools? Are you kidding me? Conformity. Conformity is taught in our public schools. The reason that schools were created, and Leonis told me about this in his book. By the way, grab that new book. It's like $20. It's homeschoolsecrets.com. Good morning. Homeschoolsecrets.com. It's his brand new book. It's like $20. And it's 101 tips for homeschooling. It doesn't even matter if it's just get it. It's a great business book. It's a great book for entrepreneurs. Whether you have kids or don't kids, it's a great book. Just Google Dan Leonis, homeschoolingsecrets.com, I believe, and grab a copy. I've read it 5 times. So schools were created back in the day to create a conforming society, a population. Schools were never invented to teach. And this is back when people actually learned something in the classrooms, in the single classrooms, where they learned to read, write, subtract, add, divide. They knew their provinces, their states, their capital cities. They could name the Great Lakes. They had cursive writing. They could spell. They could think. The kids went to school for 7 hours, and if a kid was acting up, he was taken out of the classroom, not brought into the classroom. So school, it's the original idea of school in Canada and the United States is to create a conforming population. So think about that. You can't take a piss at school without asking. That's on purpose, right? That's on purpose. The teachers probably don't even know about that now, why the bells ring, why all the 5-year-olds are in the classroom with all the 5-year-olds, why all the 7-year-olds are in the classroom with the 7-year-olds, all that stuff. It's just all conformity, right? It's the opposite of what I want for my kid. It's the fucking opposite of what I want for my kid. I want a kid that diverges. I want a kid that's a maverick. I want her to be a renegade. I want her to be an independent thinker. I want her to take personal responsibility for every result in her life. I want her to look around at the 99% and do the exact opposite. So here I was sending my kid to the ultimate conformity camp, the ultimate sheeple camp. That's what school is. I don't give a shit if it's private school or Montessori or public school. They send them there. You can't take a piss without asking. Do you think that that's teaching independent thinking? Do you think that's teaching badass mindset? No, it's doing the exact opposite. So I'm very, very happy that we finally made this decision. It took 2 years for us to wrap our minds around this because we're not homeschooling. We didn't know anything about it. I'm not going to stay at home and homeschool my child. I'm busy. I'm building companies. I'm helping businessmen. My wife is busy with her charitable work, with her mindfulness, with her business. She's on boards. She's helping at the school. So for us, it never crossed our minds. Our minds were closed to the idea. Just like your mind is closed to marketing, just like your mind is closed to peak performance, to personal development in a lot of areas. It was the same for homeschooling. Our mind was closed. Well, that's for somebody else, right? And good morning. It was such a big thing is just like, oh, well, that works for somebody else, but that would never work for us. And then I finally started thinking about it, and I talked to Dan, and I said, how many hours do you homeschool a day? He goes, two. He says, you have 22 hours of freedom when you homeschool. He goes, I homeschool my kids, both my son and my daughter, 2 to 3 hours a day maximum. He says, then we go to the playground. He said, we had freedom to live in New York, London, England, Naples. He says, we've lived everywhere, Rhode Island. He said, 2 hours, 3 hours tops. And I said, what do you do during those 2 and 3 hours? He says, well, that's it. He says, you focus on math, you focus on chess, you focus on reading, and he says, everything else takes care of itself. I said, you focus on just those 3 things? He goes, voracious reading, read, math every day, an hour of math every day, 2 hours of math a day, whatever it is. And he said, and chess, he says, if you throw that in, that's next level. That's next level for entrepreneurship, for strategy, for mental toughness. He goes, play some chess every single day. Good morning. And I was like saying, what about history and geography and science? He goes, that all comes with reading. He says, spelling comes with math. So what do? We're sitting in the hot tub the other day, 2 weeks ago, and I look at Krista and I'm like, we know she's learning nothing at school, right? We know she's learning nothing at school. Plus we got to drive her there 20 minutes at 8 a.m. Then we got to go back and get Emery at 3 o'clock. My God, they just get there and it's time to go home, right? And then you sit there and you pick up your kid and you drive back in traffic. It didn't seem like a lot, but now that we no longer do it, I'm like, oh my God, I've just got another hour a day of non-commuting. 20 minutes, whatever it works out to be, where we don't have to head to school, and I don't have to go pick her up at 3 o'clock. I spend that time with her swimming or reading or playing tennis or going for a walk or whatever. It's just endless, the freedom, the time freedom. And the other thing too is Dan said, if you want to raise an entrepreneur, he said, just remember that school is killing that thinking. Like school makes people poor. School makes people compliant. School makes a person into a follower. Like school is the opposite of leadership. School is the opposite of entrepreneurship. So I'm just like, well, that makes sense. My dad's got a grade 9 education, and he was an entrepreneur for 65 years in 13 different types of companies. He didn't have anything. And then he said, how much of your university education do you use? And I'm like, well, I use my psychology degree quite a bit, but I don't use my other degree at all. It's like Marc Andre, my business partner. He had a marketing degree from the University of Ottawa. I hire him my business partner to handle the technology and some of the marketing. And I'm like, I hand him 7 books and I'm like, forget everything you learned in university about marketing. Forget everything you learned about college and university marketing. And he did. He doesn't use 1 ounce, 1 speck of his university degree. So Dan's like, what are you doing? So Krista and I are sitting in the hot tub and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, think about this. I said, we have the world's greatest math teacher. His words, not mine, but I believe it. I believe that Dan Leonis is the world's greatest math teacher. I've seen him evaluate my daughter. I've seen him on his Zoom trainings with children. I've read his books. I've read he's an Ivy League scholarship guy from back in the day who teaches old school arithmetic. And he said, I've seen him do an evaluation. So I said to Krista, we need to get Dan to evaluate Emery. She got a recent report card here and it was just a bunch of goobly. It was just a bunch of woke nonsense. Like here they send home this postcard from the teacher. And it's a document where the teacher can fill in letters, not A, B, C, or F. Like, your kid's doing excellent or your kid's doing piss poor. You don't know that, right? What doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So they don't measure anything in school anymore. So I read this report card and I say to Krista, I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I said, here's a teacher who sat down and on a Sunday night and she wrote this, she filled it in, it's a computer program. And you put in these goofy letters for what she thinks the child. Well, her reading is a K, or her reading is a W. Like, what the fuck? Just tell me if my kid needs help reading. Just tell me if my daughter can't add, or if she doesn't know where Washington D.C. is on a map. But oh, no. You have all this confusing stuff. Report cards now are designed by the teacher unions to confuse a parent, right? To make the parent, like you or the grandparent, feel stupid, right? Well, I don't really know about math and I don't really know about history anymore and I haven't been in school in 40 years. That's on purpose. That's on purpose so that you just surrender your child to what's being taught. And if you win the lottery, you'll run into a teacher. My friend Jeff Dean, who's in my world building program, he's a neighbor on the lake at home. And his wife is a badass grade 1 and 2 teacher. Badass. She's a top 1%er, right? Like you won the lottery if you get her as your teacher. But the thing is, she's 1%. 99% of teachers are just there, right? Just mailing it in, just phoning it in, just doing the least amount that they can, waiting for the summer, waiting for Christmas, waiting for March break. So your chances with your grandkid or kid of getting a teacher like Cara Dean or some of the teachers that I had on the way up are next to not like winning the lottery. And then the only other thing is you only have them for 1 year. So here we are, good morning, here we are, and we got the world's greatest math teacher, Dan Leonis, and he lives 20 minutes from our house here in Naples. Just pure coincidence. So I look at Krista, she looks at me in the hot tub, and we're like, greatest investment we could ever make in our daughter. Because math is number one, it's number one. It's number one, whether you think you're good at math, whether your kids like math, whether any of that stuff. The number one thing is mathematics. It leads to everything. It leads to spelling, history, science, biology. It's number one. I didn't know that. It's number one in entrepreneurship. It teaches your child problem solving. It teaches your grandkid grit. It teaches your kid how to do the things, to think differently, to think as a problem. Marc Andre said, you're giving Emery, you're loading the deck. You're stacking the deck. You're giving your daughter an unfair advantage. Mark's dad is a university mathematician, one of the greatest minds in the country. So Mark and his sister have that basis in mathematics that serves them in everything they're doing. So interesting how they said that's the greatest ROI. So I look at Krista in the hot tub and she looks at me and she says, we gotta get Dan to privately tutor Emery. An hour a day, 2 hours a day, whatever. So Dan doesn't take on private clients usually. He does his Zoom every day. He's a trader, so he's trading each day during the week. But he's a friend of mine. So I contact him, I write him a letter, and I said, I'd like to hire you to tutor Emery. 2 hours a day, you said, in person, no technology. I don't want any screens. I don't want any tablets. I don't want any of that stuff. I said, what can we work out? So he gets back to me the next day and he says, he did an evaluation on her, by the way. And he said, okay, she's at a grade 5 level and she's in grade 5. So that's unacceptable to me. Like, in other words, the levels are just insane too in schools, right? If they say your kid's in grade 4 and they're at a grade 4 level, that's not a pat on the back. That means they're exactly where they should be with the mediocre majority, with the average and the ordinary. If they say your kid is with everybody else, oh boy, run. Same for your grandkids, run, diverge, head the opposite way, look around and do the opposite. So Dan and he said, sure, I'll take her on. He says, how about every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 2 hours at the kitchen table? I'm like, okay, I'll drive her there. I'll work for 2 hours outside at your pool, and you can work with Emery. And we decided on an agreement. I'd have her there the next day. So we're 3 weeks in, and Dan has been teaching my daughter mathematics with a paper and pen at the kitchen table at his home for 2 hours and 15 minutes yesterday. And I walk in, and what do I see when he's doing all these math drills? He runs his math class with Emery like I run my hockey practice. Fundamentals 10,000 times. 10,000 times, 10,000 shots, 10,000 stick handles, 10,000, just over and over. The basics, up and down. 2s, 3s, 5s, 7, 8, 9, division, and then spelling. So he told me that math takes care of almost everything along with reading. So then all of a sudden I hear him correcting my daughter in spelling. How do you spell protractor? How do you spell octagon? How do you spell triangle? How do you spell square? How do you spell arithmetic? And it's just on. So my daughter's got the white recipe cards out, right? He uses the exact little recipe cards, index cards that I talk about using when you're studying. So here he is. He's got her writing down with pen on real paper, good morning, on the recipe cards, all these different things. And she's got a stack of them now that she has to look at. And then, Lord behold, what does he give her? Actual homework like I do. If a coach doesn't give homework, they're not a coach. It's so hard to find a good coach. It's so hard to find a good consultant. And one of the key indicators is how much homework they give. I pile on the homework for my champions. I pile on the homework for my world builders. I piled on the homework for my 8-week world building program last year. My guys were in shock. I'm like, do the fucking work or you're gone. But you know what? For the 2 hours I'd have them on there, they'd have to do another 4 hours of homework. That's the sign of a great piano teacher. That's the sign of a great tennis teacher. That's the sign of a great math teacher. That's the sign of a great art teacher. What's the meeting after the meeting? Well, I gotta, he sends her home, and every second day she doesn't go to see him. Well, guess what she's responsible for on that day? Doing an hour of math for breakfast. It's only 1 hour. It's 1 hour. She does her 2s, her 3s, her 5s, her 7s, all the way up to 9. And then she does them back down, and she times herself, and she writes it and says it verbally. He makes her close her eyes and visualize the numbers. Visualize division, visualize addition, visualize subtraction, visualize spelling, visualize any problem. You know those problems that are mind twisters? If the train is coming this way at 90 miles an hour for 3 days, and this train is coming, that kind of stuff, mind bending. And he does it auditory, using her mouth, visual, writing it down on the index cards, and making her close her eyes and see the result. 2 plus 2. He makes her see it, say it, and visualize it. And of course, just paper everywhere. When she's done, the kitchen table is full of index cards, full of paper, pens, and he just takes it all and he throws it in the recycle bin, and she has the index cards and a journal with the important principles that she's won. So it's drill, 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 drill. So I said to Emery after the first one, I said, you just had 2 hours of math with Dan. I said, how long would it take you to learn that much in your school here in Florida? Well, she said, a year. And then I said, would you learn that in a year? She said, well, it's not fair, Daddy, because I wouldn't learn any of that stuff. I wouldn't learn how to count by 2s, 3s, 5s. I wouldn't learn addition. I wouldn't learn a subtraction. So she said, I can't really answer that accurately. Yesterday, we're driving home. She did 2 hours and 15 minutes with him. And he's drilling, fundamentals, perfect practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes permanent. Drills. And I said, how great was that? She loves it. Like any kid, they want to do well. Any kid, don't tell me, I've worked with kids age 5 to 45 my entire life. Kids want to win. Kids want to be successful. Nobody wants to lose. And kids, that's how you build real self-esteem. She's building, you know what Leonis is doing? He's building my kid's self-esteem, because she was like, I heard her say one time, I'm not really good at math. And I'm like, holy fuck. That's the last thing I ever want to hear off my kid's lips, is I'm not good at something because of some horseshit teacher. Oh, I'm not really good at science. You heard that. I'm not that type of, that's not mine. Or I'm not that, that's such horseshit. And you got to stop that stuff dead in its tracks, whether it's your kid or your grandkid. Get a teacher who knows how to teach. Greatest investment you ever made. And all these snow days and everything, like back home, our schools, they never put 5 days together. If it's not a snow day on Monday, it's a snow day on a Friday. If the school isn't closed for this, or they're putting on a play, everything and anything but studying. Everything and anything but learning. We're very blessed at home in our small community to have 2 outstanding teachers. So Krista and I will make the decision how much we want to continue with homeschooling in Canada. But I'll tell you right now, Dan Leonis is in my daughter's life forever. For as long as he's willing to teach her mathematics, I said by the time we leave here in May in Florida, I said, she's at level 5 now, grade 5. Not that it matters, but what gets measured gets done, so it does matter. I said, what level is she going to be in a couple of months? He said, grade 8. He says, I'll have her at grade 8 level. She's in grade 5 right now. She's at level 5. And I said, by the time we leave, she'll be at grade 8. And then he says, when she comes back, we'll get her to grade 12 graduation level. And so she'll be in grade 6, but she will be and then he says, we're into the college and university levels, the SATs and all that stuff. Holy moly. That's what a great teacher can do. That's what a great coach can do. Somebody who challenges you to be better. I mean, you may not like me. You may not care for me all the time. I may not be your cup of coffee, but I'll tell you this much. I'm all in when it comes to coaching. I'm a world building extremist. I'm a world building supremacist. I don't teach meditation. I don't teach yoga like my daughter or my wife. I don't teach mindfulness. I don't teach chess. I don't know anything about those subjects. I've never won a championship in those, and I'm not successful in those. I only teach what I've won a championship, and I continue to work at a championship level. I've won championships in hockey, coaching, athletics, and I've won every award there is in marketing and in entrepreneurship and business. And I continue to get up every day on the battlefield. So that's why I share it with you. The day I'm not on the battlefield, the day I'm out here walking, talking about yesterday, or the day I'm out here like talking about my distant memory, some fuzzy-headed professor, then I'm done. then stop listening to me then. Stop listening to me. As soon as I'm not in business, as soon as I'm not coaching men, as soon as I'm not an entrepreneur, as soon as I don't have employees, as soon as I'm not paying taxes, as soon as I'm not losing, as soon as I'm not winning, stop listening to me. Book reports can be dangerous for your financial health. So not only have I won championships at what I teach, but I also am continuing to win championships and work at a 1% level. Everything that I teach is 1%. If I'm not at a top 1%, I don't mention it. I don't talk about it. I don't know about something, I don't talk about it. So Dan Leonis, the world's greatest math teacher, I like that attitude, how he tagged himself as that. He goes, yeah. He said, I'm arguably the world's greatest math teacher. And I was like, get rid of the arguably. I said, go all in on that. So he's gone all in on that. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm at his kitchen. My daughter's at his kitchen table. No technology, pens, papers, drills. And you should see, he's teaching her how to think in terms of problem solving, which is just next level for entrepreneurship. So yes, I am raising an alpha female. Yes, I am raising an entrepreneur. And yes, I am raising a child that I'm developing her autonomy. I'm developing her autonomy so when she's older, she'll have choices. She'll have the choice to be financially free, and she'll have the choice to be what I call location free. She'll be able to work where she wants, on what she wants, on the terms she wants. That's not taught in school. Autonomy is not taught in school. Okay, independence is not taught in school. Control is not taught in school. Personal sovereignty is not taught in school. The opposite is. Follow the crowd, conform, don't think, do the minimum, look for shortcuts, plus all the other stuff that's seeped into our schools. If you got grandkids heading to school, they're going to be forced, read my lips, forced onto screens no matter what your kids or what you do. So if they're going to a public school at age 4, okay, and you're like books, and all this other stuff. As soon as they enter the school system, public or private, they're going to be forced onto a screen at age 4. Think about that. They're going to spend their day as a 4 or 5-year-old on an iPad, on a magic board, on an iPad. They're going to show them movies. They're going to show them videos. They're going to talk about politics. They're going to talk about sex. They're going to talk about men, boys not being boys. They're going to talk about girls not being girls. They're going to talk anti-America. They're going to talk about anti-Canadian politics. They're going to talk about how you as dad, as grandpa are well, you know what you are in the school system, right? Good morning. In the system in there is you are the evil top 5% white male that built this country. You're a capitalist pig. You're an evil 1%er. You're rich. You're corrupt. You're racist, and you're dumb. And you're dumb. Don't help me with my homework, Dad, because you don't know anything. You look at all the mistakes. We're fixing the world. They're going to learn learn about climate change and global cooling and global warming, and they're going to watch Al Gore videos. That was a good one 15 years ago in all the Canadian high schools. Instead of learning how to add 10 plus 10 or how to spell Mississippi, which they couldn't do, oh no, in the high schools 15 years ago, they were watching a video by a politician talking about global warming. Global warming didn't work out as pronounced, so then of course it had to become climate change. Much easier word. Also, in our schools, the destruction of the English language on purpose. So it's like, oh well, it's because of texting. It's not just because of texting. Like, for the first time in history, we're communicating with our thumbs, which is not something that we should be very proud of. But when you read a text, you can see that our young people, but also our old people like you, it's you're writing like you have like you have a brain injury, a brain damage. And it's on purpose, right? They're getting rid of all the nouns. They're getting rid of cursive writing on purpose. It's no longer in our schools because they don't want anything specific anymore. They want it and them. They want to move from nouns to verbs in our vocabulary. So we'll no longer speak with precision. We'll no longer say man. We'll no longer say woman. We'll no longer say freedom. We'll no longer say work. Work is a toxic, triggering word. Male is a toxic, triggering word in the education system. Saying somebody is a female or a girl is a toxic, triggering word in the education system. Do you know Dan Leonis told me that they took red pens out of school 11 years ago on purpose again, right? They took red pens out of teachers' hands 11 years ago in America. Why do you think that was? They say because it's triggering to the child. So think about your teacher when you were growing up and she was correcting your history paper or your math paper, and you get it back. And if you were a student like me, C's and D's, my whole paper would be covered in red ink. Wrong, 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 no, 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 fix this. That's how you get better, right? That's how you get better. Losing teaches you to smarten up and become better. So we don't have losing in our schools anymore. We have 8th place trophies, but we also don't have red pens. So the teachers now aren't allowed to use red ink. Think about this in the real world. I'm raising an entrepreneur who is going to be battling with the most mentally tough, most competitive, most driven Chinese, Asians, and Indian entrepreneurs, and Americans and Canadians, just a rare sliver of Americans and Canadians. But man, oh man, like Dan Leonis says, he says his Asian students, his Chinese students, and his Indian students, if we're doing 2 hours of math with our daughter, they're doing 4. And I'm not into the all in, you know. I want happiness. I want autonomy. I want some balance. I want some fun. So I'm not into that model, but I'm also not into the no work model. So America and Canada, we're teaching our kids to be helpless. We're teaching them to be lazy. We're teaching them to be non-thinkers. We're teaching them to be followers. We're teaching them to be sheep. We're teaching them to go on what people say. We're teaching them to listen to so-called experts, and on you go. No more red markers in the schools with your grandkid because it's triggering. It's too hard on them for the teacher to say, well, you know, Johnny, 3 plus 3 doesn't equal 8. You just got to say, well, I guess it does. Here's your ribbon. Here's your pat on the back. Instead of, listen, 3 plus 3 equals 6, you dumb fuck, and fixing it. You know what? I'm getting my kid ready to battle. I'm getting my kid mentally tough. That's why she's playing tennis. Tennis and golf are mental warfare if you're good at it. You know, one day you're drinking the wine in tennis and golf. The next day you're picking the grapes. That's business. Golf and tennis remind me of business. You think you're good, then you're horrible. You're horrible, and then you're good. You're winning, and then you're losing. It's isolation. It's just you out there with the ball. There's nobody to blame. It's just like entrepreneurship. Chess is the same. There's nobody to blame. It's mental warfare. It's cerebral warfare. It's just the best. Compare that to no red ink in the classroom. Compare that to 8th place trophies. So if you are interested in hyper accelerating your child, hyper accelerating yourself, hyper accelerating your grandchildren before it's too late, buy Leonis's new book at homeschoolingsecrets.com or Homeschool Secrets, one or the other. Look it up. Dan Leonis, Einstein Blueprint, and it's $20. And tell him I sent you. He's not going to give me fuck all, but just tell him I sent you. That's it. My 10-year-old officially dropped out of school here in Florida, and Krista and I now have an art teacher, a music teacher, a chess teacher. I'm in charge. I'm the gym teacher, by the way. I'm living my dream. I'm in charge of burpees, Hindu squats, swimming, tennis, rollerblading around the neighborhood. I'm also in charge of homework. I'm the guy who sets the egg timer. I set the egg timer for 30 minutes. She does 30 minutes of breakfast. Then I set the egg timer, 10 minutes of cursive every day with the books. Okay, cursive for breakfast, Emery. Okay, now 30 minutes cursive for math for breakfast, and then we're done for a while. 2 to 3 hours a day, and we have ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom. And what I'm really excited about is she's progressing. Just here, 3 weeks, she's learned more in 3 weeks than she has in the last 3 years. And that's being very, very kind to the school system. So that's it, taking 100% accountability for teaching my child to be a healthy, happy, and wealthy future entrepreneur, mother, wife, female, athlete, you name it. Handing her the secrets to her autonomy, her personal sovereignty, her control, her independence, and getting her out of these toxic environments, these anti-America, anti-Canada, anti-responsibility, anti-family, getting her out of those toxic environments, especially at her age when all that stuff is happening from kindergarten up to grade 5 and 6. Sorry, we are out. Like the great Kevin O'Leary says, we are out with extreme prejudice. My wife Krista, by the way, is a biology and science teacher. She doesn't teach right now, but she's a high school biology and science teacher. So we got a built-in teacher to help with anything, and I'm a built-in gym teacher. That's what I went to school for. So I'll keep you updated. If you need any help with anything else, there's 3 ways to work with me. Number 1, you can buy my book, How to Not Get Your Ass Kicked in Business and in Life. Go to nobullbook.com, nobullbook.com. Grab a copy. I'll throw in one of these t-shirts, badass t-shirts for free. Also, you have a few more hours to subscribe for the March newsletter, and then I'm shutting immigration. Unlike Creepy Joe, I'm shutting the border. I'm closing the border later today. If you want to receive my March Michael McLean World Building newsletter, you gotta sign up today. Badassletter.com. That's badassletter.com. The link's below. And then finally, if you're looking to really, really be joined at the hip with champions and badass lions and kings, apply at World Builders. Badassworldbuilders.com. Badassworldbuilders with an S.com. And that's my digital online 12-month mastermind for top 5% businessmen, husbands, fathers, grandfathers, community leaders. Pickleball tournament on here. I'm gonna pick up a pickleball racket for an upcoming tournament here. I'm a tennis guy. I'm not a pickleball guy, but I'll be a pickleball guy in that tournament. And there's mixed doubles, and there's male doubles, and there's female doubles. What are they gonna do with those names in a while? My God, that won't be acceptable. That's being taught in the schools. Those are trigger words. Those are toxic words. Those are racist words. So my daughter's being taught the exact opposite. She's doing the ultimate, we're doing the ultimate badass, millionaire, diverge, pivot, whatever you want to call it, move. We're looked around, we've seen all the schools, private, public, Montessori, you name it. We've looked around and we've decided we're out. We've looked around and saw that the majority that is dead ass wrong, and we're doing the exact opposite. That's it for today. God is good, man. God is great. Look at this sunshine, Today is, I think, my 66, I'm 66-0 in the new year. 66-0. There's been 66 days since January 1st, give or take. And I've been able to get my red Jerry Seinfeld X on all 66 days, I believe 66. My mom and dad, this is their last full day here in Naples. So we're gonna hang out by the pool, read, go for 3 different walks, and just enjoy each other's time. It's been a true blessing having my mom and dad here for the last 8 days. That's it. 2 words that changed my life, 2 words that can change yours. Be relentless.